Disc 3. Truth exists, my mind was shrieking. It doesn't matter what it is or where it is. Somewhere, somehow, there is truth. I don't care if it's in Christianity or Judaism or Islam or in the most despised cult in the deepest bowels of depravity. It exists, and I will not spend another minute of my life flailing blindly around in the filth and miasma of ignorance for any other reason than to find it. The universe isn't vague and ignorant. I am vague and ignorant. Something is true, and it doesn't matter what it is. I'm not going to be false anymore. I have not even the slightest trace of the slightest reservation about the fact that I would rather suffer and die figuring out what is true than continue this life as a slave to lies and ignorance. I just reread those last few paragraphs, and they come somewhat close to what my brain looked like after the explosion. Death, rebirth events come in all shapes and sizes, and this was my first step. This was the one that separates who I was from what I am now. That was the day I set fire to my life and went to war. The next 2 years were spent in a state of burning obsession. I quit my job, dumped my belongings, and moved from Chicago to a small town in Iowa. I scoured bookstores and took full advantage of the local library's statewide lending program. I bought a computer and spent hours every day hunched over the keyboard trying to express the truth. I read and I wrote. I edited, discarded, and rewrote. Every few weeks I would delete all my files, reformat all my disks, and burn, literally, in a kettle barbecue, all my notes and handwritten pages. I almost never read anything I wrote because the mere act of writing it rendered it obsolete in my thinking. I severed all ties, no job, no friends, no family, and had only a few possessions. I did nothing else. I had no other thought. I went for long walks, thinking, pounding away at whichever door I was stuck behind at the moment. And then one day, after a couple of years of this, I was suddenly done. Just like that. Done. Although I didn't think of it in these terms, I had become enlightened, satori, awake, truth realized, a jnana, Buddha, whatever you want to call it. Getting the hang of this new state, however, would take me another decade. I've been asked if I'd do it all over again if I had the choice, but it's not something I chose in the first place. There was never any decision. I never made any choice. It's not like a career path where you set your sights and go after it. It's more like you're walking along a mountain path that suddenly turns to mud, and you find yourself hurtling at breakneck speed into the unknown, and before too long, hurtling at breakneck speed into the unknown becomes your reality. And then, one day, equally without warning, you're launched into empty space. And, before too long, empty space becomes your reality. That's where I am now. Empty space is my reality. The void. No self. I abide in non-dual, non-relative awareness. This is the part that can't be explained. I can't frame it in words, even for myself. No one can say, I am enlightened, because there is no I to it. There is no such thing as an enlightened person. The person writing these words, the person that speaks to the students, isn't the enlightened one. My personality, my ego, what appears to be me, is just an after-image, a physical apparition based on residual energy patterns. Jed McKenna is like the outfit an invisible man wears so that he can interact with people without freaking them out. So, anyway, that's a little bit about me.
Chapter 9. Both in and out of the gang. Apart from the pulling and hauling stands what I am. Stands amused, complacent, compassionating, idle, unitary. Looks down, is erect, or bends an arm on an impalpable certain rest. Looking with side-curved head, curious what will come next. Both in and out of the game, and watching and wondering at it. Walt Whitman.
Chapter 10. Why chatter about delusion and enlightenment? Thus shall ye think of all this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bauble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. Buddha. It's Thursday night, prime time, so most of the gang is down in the basement TV room watching the week's best lineup of shows. I like sitcoms and dramas when they're well written and somewhat fresh, so I quietly slip into the back of the room and take a seat. Several people see me come in and begin to react, but I wave them down and they get the idea. When discussing personal tastes like food or music or TV and movies and whatnot, I would never mean to suggest that my tastes are in any way elevated. I have a fairly narrow band of appreciation, but it has little to do with Enlightenment stuff. With TV, movies, and novels, I don't shun horror or violence. I get weepy at the right parts. I laugh when something strikes me as funny. The willing suspension of disbelief may come a little harder for me than most, not in the conventional sense, but in the sense of forming an empathetic bond with the plight of the characters. The same holds true in real life. I see people fulfilling their roles and acting like themselves, and I tend to forget that they really identify with their character and their character's plight. There's some whispering in the room as word of my presence is passed around. Some heads turn, people smile. I don't come down here often, don't do the mingling thing much, but tonight I just felt like watching something with other people. I'm a little concerned that my presence will detract from the viewing for the group, but there's nothing wrong with making them a little uncomfortable now and then. Maybe it will get them to somehow reevaluate their own views of the programs we're watching. Maybe my presence will make them self-conscious so they observe themselves observing dramatic performances, which might in turn encourage them to become detached observers in their own dramatic performances. Or maybe we're all just vegging out in front of the TV. I'm not really a people person. I don't understand people, and I don't identify with them. I don't identify with my own status as a man, or a person, or a human being. I have a very distinct impression of life as a stage drama, and I find it endlessly mystifying that anyone truly identifies with their character. I watch my own life with amused detachment. I may be doing this or that, fulfilling my role, but I'm almost always out in the seats somewhere, watching it all, as unprepared for the next thing I do as anyone else. Being a detached observer is nearer my reality, and I find it belief-defying that everyone isn't the same, that they're up in their characters, playing out all this life stuff like it's for real. Sometimes I think that grabbing them by the shoulders and shaking or slapping them will snap them out of it. Not really, but kind of. I watch myself being wisdom guy, and I can't believe anyone really falls for it. I can't believe that this stuff isn't obvious to everybody. Truth doesn't need to be sought. because it isn't lost. It's not at the end of some path waiting to be discovered. It's not the result of practice or growth or learning. Truth is everywhere, at all times, never absent, never distant. Truth isn't the tricky thing. It's the simplest thing there is. In fact, truth is that which can't be simplified further. Possessing the ability not to see truth, now that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. In fact, I would never believe it was even possible if I hadn't done it myself for 30 years. I look back on my own life before enlightenment as a sleep state from which I was able to rouse myself, and I think of everyone I see as being in that same sleep state, like somnambulists sleepwalking and sleep-talking through life. This view is not peculiar to me. Anyone who was awake would say the same thing. I see my role as being someone who shines a light into sleeping minds, and if they're looking for it, and if they want to awaken, and if they're willing to struggle upward out of the clinging grasp of the dream state, then maybe I can be of assistance. I don't see it as my role to save or rescue anybody, any more than regular people feel the need to rescue each other from sleeping and dreaming. I don't think of people as victims or patients or in any way defective, just asleep. Some will emerge from their dream state, and I may play a role in that, or I may be of some assistance to them once they're awake. I'm a gate tender. I holler through the portal, and those that can hear me receive a sense of direction, and those that come through find a friend to welcome them. Tonight's shows are pretty good. A bunch of comedies and a 1-hour drama. It's getting near the end of the season, so the comedies are trying to deepen our love for them, and the drama is building up to its suspenseful cliffhanger, all in an effort to still be our favorites when the distant fall season begins. It's not long before I find it a little irksome to be sitting in a basement watching facile TV antics when it's such a beautiful and long-awaited spring evening outside. So I go upstairs, grab one of Satyam Nadine's books, and go out on the front porch to read. As I rock back and forth in a porch glider, my mind strays from the words on the page to the number of people who seem to be around these days. What are they coming out for? Some I know are coming out 4 or 5 times for every one meeting they're having with me. This place is developing into something, and I don't know what. I'm amused by the thought that we might have to build bunkhouses, and remind myself not to joke about bunkhouses aloud, or a few weeks later I'll look out the window, and there they'll be. That's how it is in dreams. Thoughts become things practically before they're thought. It occurs to me that people are coming out because they think they'll benefit simply by being near me. I wouldn't care to see things develop along those lines. I can see where people would want to perform selfless service, so they might be coming out, tithing to the household, laboring for whatever ideal they feel the house represents, bringing gifts, all in the hope of what? Earning merit? Burning karma? Exhibiting unconditional love for its own sake? I don't really have a clue. Of course, some are here mainly for Sonoya. She doesn't teach or even speak much outside the normal course of getting things done, and yet she possesses that which so many seek, perfect equanimity. The people that come out here seem to enjoy working for her, as if they had been wanting to give of themselves, but were unable to find the right framework within which to do so. Sonoya combines the attributes of selflessness and causelessness, allowing people to give of themselves not for the higher good of some doctrine or organization, but simply for the giving. I can see where people would want to do that, and I can see where it might be difficult to find an outlet for such a desire. In Sonoya, they see selflessness perfected, poise, balance,